Hey everybody, Trisha Hirschberger here, bringing you the essential information you need about Baldur's Gate 3, the 20 years long awaited next installment in the classic Dungeons & Dragons RPG franchise. If you're a little out of the loop on this one, we'll catch you up. Here are the things you need to know. First up, let's cover the basics. What is Baldur's Gate? There are actually two answers to that. First, in fiction, Baldur's Gate is a city in the Dungeons & Dragons Forgotten Realms campaign setting. It's been featured in novels and a number of D&D supplements over the years, most recently the 5th edition Descent into Avernus adventure book. In the world of video games, the Baldur's Gate series is one of the most important role-playing game franchises of all time. For many people, the original game and its sequel, Baldur's Gate 2, represent the best ever adaptations of D&D to the world of video games. The games came out in 1998 and 2000 and have seen expansions and spin-offs and re-released versions, but Baldur's Gate 3 will be the first actual sequel the core franchise has gotten, so it's been a 20-year wait. On to number 2. Let's talk about the developers behind the Baldur's Gate franchise, because that's part of why it's been so important to the Western RPG genre. The original game was actually one of the very first games developed by BioWare. You know, the company that developed Dragon Age and Mass Effect. And if that wasn't enough, the games were published by Interplay, which had an in-house studio called Black Isle that also played a role in the Baldur's Gate games. Black Isle developed the first few Fallout games and would later make Icewind Dale and Planescape Torment. So we're talking about the kings of the isometric RPG world, all working on the Baldur's Gate games in some way. Fast forward to today. And BioWare and Black Isle aren't quite the same as they once were. BioWare is now owned by EA, of course, and Black Isle was dissolved and sort of mutated into Obsidian, which is now part of Xbox Game Studios. So who's developing Baldur's Gate 3? Larian Studios, of course. Larian Studios, if you don't already know, are the Belgian developers responsible for the Divinity games, most famously Divinity Original Sin and its sequel. Now, of course, those games are among the best reviewed and best-selling RPGs of the past decade. Wizards of the Coast, the company that makes Dungeons & Dragons, has been holding on to the Baldur's Gate rights for years. And Larian actually approached the company wanting to make Baldur's Gate 3 right after they put out Divinity Original Sin 1. Apparently, Wizards thought Larian weren't quite ready to take on the Baldur's Gate task at that time, but a few years later, when the studio was getting ready to release Original Sin 2, Wizards came a-callin'. And that's why Larian is now working on this new official D&D game. On to number 3. So now we come to the most controversial element around Baldur's Gate 3 so far, the fact that it has purely turn-based combat. That might seem obvious at first, since Larian's RPGs and Dungeons & Dragons itself both have turn-based combat, but that's actually not what we saw in the classic Baldur's Gate games. Those games used a real-time with pause combat system that was really common at the time, and that we've seen more recently in the Pillars of Eternity franchise. Combat is real-time, with everyone acting at once, but you have the chance to pause at any point to give new orders to your party members. So while Larian's turn-based system might be closer to real D&D than the real-time battles of the original Baldur's Gate games, this feature looks to have split the fans in terms of early online reactions. If you're coming to Baldur's Gate 3 as a Divinity fan, or as a newer D&D fan brought into the club by 5th edition, you're probably thinking that the early gameplay looks just about right for a D&D game from Larian Studios. But if you're a die-hard fan of the classic BioWare and Black Isle games, well, this looks to be a pretty big departure from that, at least in terms of combat. Moving on from the turn-based debate, let's talk about what else we know about the gameplay of Baldur's Gate 3. We know it will have multiplayer. It will also have core characters with background stories like Divinity games, or you can make your own from scratch. The game will be based on 5th edition D&D rules, and in the recent look at gameplay, we actually saw visible dice rolls on the screen, letting you know whether checks succeeded or failed. You'll also be able to play the game with a traditional isometric or more modern third-person camera. When it comes to building your character, you can choose from a variety of races, classes, and backgrounds for your character. Elves, half-elves, drow, half-drow, dwarves, tieflings, githyanki, and halflings were all mentioned in that recent gameplay demo, and they also highlighted classes, including wizard, cleric, fighter, ranger, rogue, and warlock. Those are the 6 planned classes for the game's early access release, but we'll have to wait and see if the missing ones, like druid and sorcerer, are added in the game's final form. All right, we've covered the developers and the gameplay. Here's what we know about the storyline. Obviously, we'll be seeing the city of Baldur's Gate in a big way, and it looks like there's going to be a major battle going on between the Mind Flayers and the Githyanki. In the cinematic that was recently revealed, we saw a fight going on between a Mind Flayer in a flying Nautiloid ship and a few Githyanki riding on dragons. It looked pretty awesome. The Mind Flayers are purple, tentacle-faced monsters that have psychic powers, enslave people, and eat brains. The Githyanki are a race that were slaves of the Mind Flayers a long time ago, and now they're sworn enemies. Interestingly, Githyanki aren't usually the good guys in D&D stories, so this game might be telling a story where there's a big conflict between two hostile forces, and everyone else is dealing with the fallout. Just speculation on that point, though. Baldur's Gate 3 will be coming to early access sometime in 2020, and will be playable on both PC and Google Stadia. Gosh, we didn't even talk about Google Stadia, but that will have to wait for another video. For more info on Baldur's Gate 3, check out the links to Game Crate below this video. Also, hit up those links to head over to Newegg for the latest deals on games and hardware. See you next time.